Hey guys, I just finished setting up a new terrarium for some amazing toads with supplies I purchased from New England Herpeticulture. NE Herp is the sponsor of today's episode of the Frog Rack podcast. They have been my first choice for terrarium supplies since they opened their doors in 2009. I keep shopping with NE Herp because Mike and Jessica are hobbyists first. They continue to have first-hand experience building vivariums and providing excellent care for captive herps. They have the best customer service, fast shipping, and a wide selection. I can always find the herp supplies I need at neherpeticulture.com. If you keep reptiles or amphibians, and you are looking to build the perfect bioactive habitat, NE Herp is your go-to source for terrariums, lighting, live plants, substrates, microfauna, wood, decor, supplements, feeder insect culturing supplies, and more. Like I said, everything you need in one place. Trusted nationwide by hobbyists, dart frog enthusiasts, and zoos, and your favorite Frog Rack podcaster. NE Herp is your one-stop vivarium shop. So head on over to neherpeticulture.com and pick up the supplies you need to support your herp hobby. Thank you, NE Herp, for supporting today's episode of the Frog Rack podcast. All right, welcome to today's guest, Mark Slatkoff from smartexotics.net. Mark, thanks for coming on the show today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, for sure. See, you're sitting in front of your frog tanks. The lights are on. What animals are right behind you? I'm just curious.
So let's see, from starting here into the middle, we have two sets of Pumilio, and then some banded imitators, a Varadero, and more banded imitators up top.
Awesome. Your dart frogs are right behind you. Cool. You keep a ton of different frogs. We'll get into that in just a second. Tell the listeners, if they haven't seen you on social media or visited your website, who are you on the internet?
Our internet presence is under Smart Exotics on Instagram. We're also Smart Exotics on Facebook. So you can find us just by general search for both of those. As you mentioned before, too, we also maintain a internet presence with our website, smartexotics.net. I'm trying to make the website a little more prevalent because I want more of my personal content, our ownership to be there than on platforms that I may not own everything. So my push is you may see more on the website going forward than social media, but we still do post fairly regularly. Like I just posted a thing up before we started for some glass frogs in one of their terrariums.
Great.
So I do that maybe once a week. It's not as much as I'd like, but yeah, we're there.
Great. Yeah, I'm trying to improve my own website. I've had the domain and it's been on and off for like 12 years. And right now it's still under construction, but I really like the feel and the information that you have up at smartexotics.net. I was taking a look at it
I
earlier
appreciate
today.
that. Yeah,
Yeah.
we're really going for like given that most people view stuff on mobile, and that's what the statistics show on our website because we can see that. So most of the people are doing mobile viewing of that website. So I've been trying to gear things towards simplified, ease of access, click on stuff, PNG files that you can pull up, like care sheets that fit resized to your screen on your phone that you can look at while you're doing stuff because most people that's how they're not carrying a laptop around with them or a
Right.
desktop. Right? That's not
Right.
realistic.
Yeah.
So, they're carrying their phone around with them. Where it's like, well, what did they? I don't remember what they told me. Let me look it up. Like that's the idea. Is I can get to the care sheets, the general basic guidelines to, if nothing else, start a conversation with people.
Right.
Oh, hey, you mentioned this. What do you mean by that?
And then a big brief overview. What species of animals, both reptiles and amphibians, are you keeping and breeding?
Overview. Okay, so we have a fair number of tree frogs, dart frogs, as you can see behind us, and that's honestly only a portion of what's in this room. We probably have 50 locales of dart frogs too. My wife works with emerald tree skinks, Solomon Island tree skinks, several different species of snake, rhino rats she's working with right now, maybe a little bit more in the future, ball pythons, things like that. The reptiles too are a little less prevalent at the shows and on our website, but we use those in my wife's classroom more for teaching
cool.
aids with the students. So with her being a high school student or teacher rather, she can take this stuff in and the kids get exposure to it and they can ask questions. The reptiles are a little easier to travel to, like the science and technology events that we do as well throughout the year. They do better outside than if I were to take like some of the amphibians.
Yeah.
So that side of the business is more educational for sure
That's great.
on like getting the kids engaged with, because not too many people are afraid of frogs, but they are afraid of snakes. So if we can show them, hey, there's nothing wrong with it. Here, hold it, like, touch it, things like that, and that gets them a little more apt to being open-minded about everything else.
That's cool.
Like that.
That's cool.
That's our shtick at the moment. We set the business model up that we really want educational stuff to be the forefront. And my wife's great at that. Like, since she's a teacher, like, she's really good at doing that stuff, distilling things down. I manage all the technical side of things with the website, Instagram, Facebook. And then we come together with the frogs and the reptiles, and then we have Smart Exotics.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you got in, like, had looked at the name, but part of it has the art in it. So that really that's what we're pushing to, is not just the educational stuff, but the art side of things. With, I have a blast making these terrariums from scratch.
Right.
So things like that we're like showing even new, like, continued hobbyists of, hey, this is what you can do. Like, there's new ways of doing things. This is what we're doing. Don't limit yourself.
Awesome. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's been so many good developments in how animals are kept, the spaces they're kept in, the care they've been given in just the last couple of years, really.
Yeah, honestly, like, we started 6 years ago, and it's changed like almost as much as like you would consider like computer technology has changed. Like, it's changed that quickly in that span of time too. I'm really excited about that, because that's always
Right.
like, it's new toys to try.
Yeah. Yeah. I bred my first red-eyed tree frogs were the first amphibian that I bred in 1999 after
Okay.
reading a book by Robert Malo from Sandfire Dragon Ranch. And things have come a long way. There were no front opening terrariums in 1999. Just to give
Yeah, I
you
don't
an
doubt it.
idea. Yeah. Um, just as an example. So tell me about your first encounter with a pet amphibian.
Kind of relates back to my wife again. We had the opportunity during the pandemic. One of her previous employers had some type of like conservation group that she was operating with that they had to shut down, right?
Okay.
So they were, finding and rehoming all the animals that were associated with that operation. And my wife looked at me and she's like, well, I worked with these guys. I'd hate to see them go anywhere. So she's like, she had like a list of, I want these ones because I worked with them the most. So we ended up
Cool.
having a pair of White's tree frogs, Bonnie and Clyde, that moved in with us at the height of the pandemic, right as I was like, and so was she. We were doing more like a little bit more telework. So they were, you know, in the kitchen with me while I was working on the laptop doing remote work. And it was just neat. Like, you see them move around, and with them, they're more nocturnal, but they still do stuff during the day. They hop around, they're inquisitive. And it was also my first time seeing a bioactive enclosure too. Um, so I was like, oh wow, this is really cool. And that kind of spiraled into, well, as it did with everybody, I think at that point, like, you had a lot of free time. And some of us had, you weren't vacationing, so you had a little more flexibility in your spending. I was like, well, let's get some red eyes. I'd like to see what that experience is like. And really where that ended up, had no ambitions of breeding them. They ended up breeding on their own in their paludarium that we had taken months to build.
Cool. Yeah.
And once that happened, I was like, oh wow, this is really neat. And then, crap, what are we doing with 100 tadpoles? Because
Yep.
we had to start thinking forward of, okay, let's say even half of them survive, due to us not knowing what we're doing. What are we doing with them?
Yeah.
Like, that 50 frogs is like, nobody has any business, like, with one species, like, to some degree, especially a beginner, maintaining that many animals. Like, that's overwhelming. And so the business kind of launched from there. We sat down and we were talking about it. We're like, well, yeah, we probably should find a way to do this. And the expos were an avenue
Hmm.
for that. And we figured, okay, well, if we're going to do the expos, we need to start a brand. And what do we want that brand to be? What do we want the business model to be? That was the biggest thing for us, was how do we establish our business model so that we don't try to do too much? You see some people that, and it's fine too. So I get it. They want to do everything, right?
Yeah.
You want to do
It's
this, you
an
want to do
addictive
that.
hobby. Yeah.
Yes. So the snowballing effect is so quick, and you can get overwhelmed, especially let's just take tree frogs, for example. The amount of work involved with just taking care of one species and their offspring can be overwhelming for just most people, right? They're going to look at it and
Yeah.
go, what? You're changing paper towels and water bowls every day, and you're feeding them every night, let alone the cricket bill on
Yep.
top of that. So we wanted our business model to like kind of funnel us into like a good, okay, we're going to stay in this lane. We're going to stay here. You might deviate occasionally, but then we're going to come back because the business model is really going to drive what this organization is going to do. So our
Yeah.
business model is designed around education and also the art side of stuff and also good husbandry. That was 6 years ago. I'll tell you what, like our area was lacking any kind of tree frog vendors at the expos. So you didn't have a
Yeah.
lot of good information either.
Right.
So we started the website, got the care sheets up, stuff like that.
That's awesome. And part of your business model, of course, I think you glossed over it, but you chose to go direct to customer and not wholesale route. Is that right?
Right. You can still, obviously any business can do wholesale too. It's a volume thing.
Right.
And with tree frogs, yes, you breed, say, even just one red-eye tree frog female. She can lay in the 3-day period, she can lay potentially 2 to 3 clutches. Well, you could end up with 100 to 250 eggs out of that. And yes, we're not assuming that all of them survive, but
Right.
let's just say most of them do, right? That's a lot of frogs. And what do you do with that? So yes, we could have wholesaled, but the time we take to raise them, I felt it was better to get them not, bigger than an inch. Wholesale is usually an inch for most tree frogs.
Yeah.
No, I don't want to do that. I want them to be well established. So our bottom end age for most of our tree frog sales end up being, I don't know, 15 weeks old.
Yep.
And at that point, no, I'm not wholesaling. We put a lot of time into them. I can house them easily where most people can't, so I'm fine bringing them back. We can take care of them if we end up with, well, this expo was kind of a bust for us, but it's fine. Not a big deal. It was a conscious decision knowing the amount of work we were going to have to maintain.
Yeah.
Wholesale, yeah, you could lessen your workload if you really wanted to that route.
Lessen your
And our
cricket
business
bill.
model, yeah. Again, we're in a position where I work a full-time job. My
Yep.
wife works a full-time job. I didn't see that we needed to do that. And we still haven't needed to as well. And I think it's given us the ability to really have that. It's like any good business or like a home craft or somebody who does like craftsmanship with like furniture that's like a family business or any other family business where they have a good handle on start to finish. We have a really good handle on husbandry for these animals from egg to tadpole to froglet to adult.
Yeah.
And then we can offer advice at any point in there for people who are trying to do it on their own too. We don't turn people away, even if they haven't bought anything from us. If
Sure.
somebody emails us with questions, it's like, yeah, here we've tried this. You might want to try it, see what happens. So no, wholesale was never. And I'm not trying to be down on wholesale, like people who sell
Nope.
wholesale or that's
Nope.
their main thing to do. That's fine.
Yeah.
Just wasn't for me
When you're
because
dealing with certain
it's a constant
species,
grind.
yeah, when you're dealing with a species of toad or tree frog that lays 4,000 eggs, it might be the best path forward for the animals, for the customers,
Yes.
and for the breeder. It might be. But I just brought it up because I like your business model and that you're vending at a lot of shows, that you put care information on your website. It shows that you're trying to connect directly to customers. And so if anyone's listening to this podcast who shops for frogs and you're thinking about who and where I want to buy my next pet frog from, you can think about, I think, three realities. One is wild collected. And I think that's really, let's talk about red-eyed tree frogs. That really shouldn't be happening. There's so many captive bred red-eyed tree frogs in North America that there's no reason to settle. There's no reason that the wild collected ones should be brought in for any other reason than to bring new genetic material in for breeders. The red-eyed tree frog Facebook groups, every other post is someone dealing with a lethargic bacterial infection from their like 1 week old red-eyed tree frog that's wild collected. Not that every single wild collected red-eyed tree frog is doomed to fail, but you have a lot more failures acclimating them than if you started with captive bred. And so that, that was one option, was wild collected. And then captive bred, I think there's two options. There's a froglet who entered into sort of the pet trade probably through a wholesale route, and maybe it's now at a pet store somewhere, which again isn't a bad thing, whether it's a big box or a mom and pop. That froglet, it's healthy, it's captive bred, but it has traveled around and it's changed hands and changed enclosures a couple times and has dealt with a fair deal of stress. And again, they're pretty resilient little animals if taken care of well. So again, that is another
Right.
option, but just know that when you buy an animal in that situation, that's what you're getting. And then the third option is your situation where you're buying breeder direct. So someone who's, like you said, you're bringing the tree frogs to the reptile expo and offering them for sale, but at the end of the day, you bring them home, put them back into beautiful, healthy, clean enclosures, give them, the best food, gut loaded, vitamin dusted food possible,
Yep.
and they're well taken care of until the next expo. And so I just think, again, customers, people shopping for frogs should just be aware of those three realities that sort of every single species of frog encounters.
And they're still exotic animals too. Like I think like that's some of like the I want to say denormalizing that we're trying to do, but it's somewhat of a re-education of these aren't just, oh, I pick them up, take them home, put them in a tank. Yes, while you can do that, okay,
Yep.
sure. Your rate of success is going to be probably 50-50, let's say. Probably a little lower depending on what kind of tank you're putting them into and level of experience of the person.
Yep.
But they are still exotic animals. They still have like unique needs that are not natural to our climate. Like you lived in Costa Rica, sure, fine. Like you can put them outside and they'd be fine. Like, really, like that's where you're at with
Yeah.
it. So you have a lot of unique things that we have to get people back on board with understanding. And, to your point of like direct to breeder, our website specifically is set up that you cannot buy something by hitting add to cart. And I know it frustrates some people. I'm sorry, it does, but we tell people we designed it that way because it's set up for them to see what we have, know what's available, know what the price is, know what they're getting into. And then there's, I don't know, 5 different ways they can contact us on our website that they can go, okay, hey, I would like to purchase this. And then we can start a conversation. We're trying to promote the conversation of the end customer to us because we are selling them an experience. We are selling
Yep.
them, or at least we're trying to give them a good experience if we
Right.
care. And that is the best way that we found that works for us. It manages our workload too, because I always kind of think about Alex when I start thinking about this stuff, because I always know how busy he is. Alex
Mhm.
Menke from Frog Daddy. Like I know how busy he is with orders going in and out. I don't have time for that.
Yeah.
Like this kind of puts the pause and slows the brakes a little bit that, okay, I've got 2 orders going out next week. I got it organized with the person or the people, I'll box them up, get them shipped, get them ready, things like that. It gives me time to focus on, this one's not looking as good as I'd like to ship it as. So we'll wait a week or two, or I'll swap it out for another animal if I need to. If I was in a more of a hurry because it was the add to cart situation and I've got 20 orders that are backlogged and I get people emailing me upset why didn't stuff ship right away. No, not for me.
Yeah.
And again, I really want to focus on quality of the experience for the customer and the animal owner, especially if they're new. Oh my God, like
Yeah.
you turn so many people away or turn them off to the hobby if they have a bad experience. And that's not like, I don't want that. Like I want them to have a good experience and then, maybe pass it on to their kids too. Like that's really what we're trying to promote with the way the website's built up.
Yeah, animal shipping has become pretty normalized. You still got to communicate really well about it. You still got to I find I've been selling a lot of newts through Morph Market lately, and I find there's a lot of customer education even about the fact that you got to go pick them up at a FedEx hub. I don't want them spending an entire day on a delivery truck where no one has any control over the temperatures they'll see or the stress they'll experience. So there's a lot of education about shipping. And for my own sake, my own busy life with family, job, and responsibilities, I only ship one day a week. I don't know if you do something similar. And no customer has given me a problem with that. They've all, as long as I communicated up front, like as soon as they pay, or even before they pay, I communicate, I'm only going to ship on Mondays. So expect, this isn't going to go out tomorrow. It's always good to set that expectation early so that there's not a misunderstanding. Because we live in the world of, add to cart, have it the next day or even the same day. If you live in a city, so many companies now are same day delivery. I don't even know how they're pulling that off. I live out in the woods, so that's not available where I live.
I live closer to like the DC metro area, and that's a thing. Like I can get stuff delivered at like 4 a.m. if I want. Like,
wow.
It's convenient for some things, especially if like I need something for the frogs, and it's like, yeah, no, I need this. Like, tomorrow morning would be great. Like that would be ideal. So
Yeah.
sometimes I do utilize that. But yes, it's definitely become a convenience factor. And it really, like, if we've made it to the point that they're really still committed on the purchase, that they're accepting and well, reasonable about the shipping conditions. And we even
Sure.
have policies on our website that clearly, and I did this early on, like our website was constructed like, I don't know, probably within the first 2 months of the business opening. And I spent like, hours till 4 in the morning
Hmm.
designing this thing and getting it to where I wanted it to be. That included the policies, the live arrival guarantee, which we've honed and focused a little bit more than what we had. So yeah, we're similar to you. We only ship like Monday through Wednesday because you start getting the tail end of the week. Like you could have a day delay and that puts you into the weekend. And then they're definitely
Right.
not getting them until Monday. And that's not good for the animals.
No way. Yeah, no
And
way.
I've had people push me on that and it's like, no, no, this is for their safety. We're going to do it this way. And, I can easily refund you your money if you think otherwise. And I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
There, and it doesn't happen too often. Like, no, this is,
Right.
most people are reasonable. And I like the people at the shows too, because people are getting more excited about stuff the more they see these things. We've had a very good response at the expos with our business model and how we present things. And I don't know if you've had a chance to look at our Instagram and see some of the videos we posted from the expo setups, but we do have a lot of positive feedback on that, which I'm happy for. Like I'm
Good.
really
Yeah.
happy that people appreciate what we're doing and how we're doing it.
Right. Yeah. So my next question for you, imagining that you probably do a lot of customer education at expos or via email and over the phone. Let's take a beginner species, maybe like an Amazon milk frog or a white tree frog or a red-eyed tree frog. Think of a beginner species, and you can choose which one you want to talk about, and explain it to me as if I'm new how I should bring it home and set it up.
All right, man, I really don't, I'm hesitant to say this. I would automatically tell them if they were looking for beginner species and they listed those three off. I would be like, my first response would be, well, you're great with a White's tree frog or an Amazon tree frog. Great beginner species. Probably like they're like the crested geckos to some degree
Yeah.
of amphibians. For the most part, you can still have problems. They're still frogs, right? Red eye tree frogs. I honestly build those to them as intermediate frogs. Like
Sure.
they're yeah. You should probably try a White's tree frog or something that's a little more manageable. Even a North American green tree frog. Like,
Yep.
try something like that for a little while, and if you really like, oh, this is really cool. I like it. I'm having success. Okay, then let's step up to a red-eye tree frog. So I'm going to set them aside as
Okay.
a high beginner, low
Intermediate.
intermediate
Yep.
level. Let's do that. Yeah, let's do that. Same thing with lemur tree frogs too.
Yep.
So let's do an Amazon milk frog. Let's do that. I would, we package them up, and our discussion would be first, okay, food. They're on right now. Ours are sitting on half-inch crickets. So you need half-inch crickets. Do you have food at home? Don't have food at home? All right, we'll go help them find food at the expo. Supplementation, we'll discuss a supplementation regimen, and I go through like our schedule since we feed every other day of calcium plus, often use carotenoids if necessary for some of these species, and then some type of vitamin A once a month
Mm.
from either Repashy or other reputable supplementation companies. And there's not that many, so there's only a few that they can pick from, and they can't go wrong.
Yep. Yep.
So we run through that, and most of those things we have at our table too. So that's an
Awesome.
easy, hey, you can see it here. If you don't want to get it here, Amazon, you can get it next day if you really don't want to buy it today, but I need to know that you're considering getting it. So that's kind of the discussion we have before they even walk away with the animal is food, feeding schedule, and supplementation. And then usually at that point, if they've already bought the animal, we know, okay, do they have an enclosure set up? Or are they going to go buy something? And generally speaking, if they have something set up and it's bioactive, I tell them, okay, that's great. You are not going to put that animal in there probably for at least 2 or 3 weeks. Know that ahead of time. Our recommendation is go home, have a separate enclosure, which I understand is somewhat cost prohibitive, but it also doubles as a quarantine tank if they have issues later on. It's usually how we describe it of, yes, it's more money, right? I
Yep.
understand that. But it's something that I, as a amphibian keeper, have realized you always need those. You always need a place to segregate somebody if they're being treated for something or they look off, just to get them back to a situation that's controlled. Bioactive is less control. It looks pretty. There's a lot more variables in there that you can't control or discern what's happening. what's going on in there. I don't know if they're eating or they go into the bathroom regularly. It's harder to see. So, they've bought the frog, they've got supplementation, they've got crickets. They're not putting them into a bioactive enclosure right away. We recommend paper towel, honestly, for a basic substrate. Simple water bowl, do a potted plant. Pothos is great. They can find those at the shows too. Or if most people who we run into already have plants in their home, so they just go home and cut clippings off their pothos plant that's hanging up in their kitchen. Perfectly fine.
Yep.
And then depending, so for Amazon tree frogs, those like the purchase. So we would tell them, hey, go get some bamboo sticks, cut those, or even PVC pipe, something that's easy to clean. Like really the idea is your 2 to 3 week quarantine period for a new animal coming home is something that's supposed to be easily cleaned and easy for you to observe and maintain. So you can monitor them soaking in their water bowl. What color are they during the day? What color are they at night? How much food are they eating? So you dump 10 crickets in, all of them are gone. Great. They're eating. They're adjusting perfectly fine since you've taken them home. After that 2 to 3 week monitoring period, and I know I'm glossing over a good bit here.
Yeah, that's fine.
So if I went into the detail, dude, we'd be here for like probably another hour just getting somebody like headed in the right direction.
I have a couple of follow-up questions. But keep going.
Okay, so 2 to 3 week quarantine period. If everybody's doing great, then they can go into their happy bioactive enclosure and continue monitoring. If they see anything off, contact us right away. Really, our live arrival or live animal guarantee gives them I think 3 to 5 days. If there's a problem, we can easily replace the animal if we need to. Really, what that is pushing people to do is to focus more on the animal. I need you to pay attention when you take these animals home, see if anything seems odd. I don't care if you think it's odd. I would rather people contact us of, hey, I think this is wrong. And I can say, no, that's fine. That's normal. Perfectly fine. That I would rather them reach out for things that they're not comfortable with so that we can guide them in the right direction to be more comfortable. And with that paper towel, very simplistic setup, that gives them the right environment to have the best success again. That 2 to 3 week period is critical for the adjustment of the animal from my home and my care to something that somebody might do slightly different.
Yeah.
All homes are different too, so we have to take into consideration airflow, temperatures in most people's home. Because the frog room is abnormally warm compared to how most people keep their homes. Most people keep their homes during the summer, probably like 68 to 70, and we're pushing 76 to 78 in this frog room at any point in the day. So we have to guide them towards, okay, keep them away from the window, keep them away from the AC vent when you set up their quarantine enclosure. Humidity requirements for an Amazon tree frog too. You're, partially covered probably 2/3 of the way with something, since your standard off-the-shelf enclosures have a full screen top. We try to make it cost effective too. Like, okay, we know you've spent $200 on this blank enclosure just to have a quarantine setup. You're 2/3 covered on the screen top. Use Saran wrap. It will work fine for 2 or 3 weeks. Unless they want it to be pretty. If they want it to be pretty, knock yourself out, go get your glass cut. But Saran wrap works perfectly fine for the intent of what we're trying to do here. And that makes it more cost effective. And I think they kind of appreciate that we're being mindful of that. Like, we understand that there's an investment here to get them to have some success. So yeah, $2 for some Saran wrap, that's pretty cheap.
Right.
And paper towels aren't super expensive, and with the Amazon tree frogs, you're going to be, we tell them, okay, during your quarantine setup for 2 to 3 weeks, you're cleaning them every night, new paper towels, spot cleaning the glass, fresh water in the water bowl with dechlorinated tap water or spring water. Do not use distilled RO in their water bowls. And we explain why that's important with the change in ion gradients between the frog's body to the water, since that water is missing all the ions for the most part. Now, misting, you knock yourself out. You want to use distilled water for misting, it's not going to hurt the animals. So we do discuss a lot of the differences there, because most people, that's a foreign concept too. They're like, well, I was told to use distilled water. Yeah, no, you can't in their water bowl. Like that, that's a big no-no for me. And I work in the pharmaceutical industry, so I know specifically what the intent of that water quality is for, because we use that for, direct injection of the clinical grade material. So like, I already have that idea of, okay, no, this is like, you shouldn't even be drinking some of this sometimes too, because it's missing so many, it's harmful for us if we drink too much of it. So yeah, that's kind of the basis. We cover supplementation, cover food, we cover temperature, humidities, how to get them to that point. with the adjustments to the enclosure that they just probably went and purchased off the hardware vendor at the expo. And I'd say it's about 50. We get
Yep.
people who are prepared and people
Yep.
who are not. And I don't want to turn them away with, well, no, you can't get the animal today. But if you're willing to go spend the money on the stuff over here to get ready, sure, we can get you rolling.
Yeah.
We can get you in the right direction. And they can stay in paper towels for months until they get another enclosure set up that's bioactive or has some more plants in it,
Sure.
whatever.
Sure. One of the biggest things a new person wants to know is if their frog is eating, and in a really complicated bioactive terrarium, throwing crickets in for a nocturnal tree frog to eat, you might never see it eat, you might never know. And so that's another big benefit of the simplified quarantine tank, especially at first, to know that your frog is eating and getting food.
Yep.
That helps with that. So you're recommending very frequent cleaning of a tree frog enclosure.
On paper towels, yes. Just
Yep.
because again, you're trying to, man. And I was right before we had this meeting. Like I was thinking about this stuff already. I was like, the idea of sterile versus clean.
Okay.
Those are two distinctly different ideas that we've been really steering people away from. No, we don't need sterile. You don't need to go through with a sterilizing agent all the time. You need clean.
Yeah.
Would you want to be in there as a frog if there's fecal matter everywhere? Probably not. So we want to go clean. Now, sometimes do you need to use a sterilizing agent on some, like maybe the water bowl is getting kind of yucky? Okay, sure. But even sterilizing agents really not what you want to use. You want to use more of a cleaner. So there's
Right.
even a third option in there too. So I've been trying to figure out how to best approach that with people who don't understand the difference, and this is also all foreign to them to guide them in the right direction. So we even recommend like, hey, get yourself some vinegar. Use vinegar, dilute it down by like 1 to 2 with water. That's your cleaning agent. You might clean once a week and with that, and every other time is just with dechlorinated tap water.
Okay. Yep. Yeah, I think have you ever kept temperate tree frogs like an American green?
We had one that came in with the Bonnie and Clyde, the
Okay.
white tree frogs I talked about earlier. We had him for, boy, they live forever.
Yeah.
He was probably 15 years or plus years. And honestly, the white tree frogs too, they lived to their 20. They passed away a couple years ago on us.
I had an American green tree frog for the better part of 10 years as well. I only mention that because I have noticed, again, I've never kept a white tree frog or an Amazon milk frog, but I have kept red-eyed tree frogs and gray tree frogs.
Right.
So for my tropical tree frog experience with red-eyeds, the higher humidity means cleaning out their fecal matter is pretty darn important. Whereas I could let it slide in a temperate enclosure that has more ventilation, less humidity, maybe a drier substrate. But with red-eyeds, I had to, and I do, work really hard to keep them clean, like you said.
Yeah, it doesn't need to be sterile.
Yeah.
Even our employees that we have that help out, so we get like 2 or 3 days a week that we have people come in and help. I have them use like the cleaning agents, and then every other time I clean when I'm on my own, I drop it out. I don't even use it because my thought is they did a good job. I'm follow up here at this point to maintain the tanks until they come back in the next week. And that's worked perfectly fine for us for the past 3 or 4 years. And even back to your like temperate question with temperate frogs, you can still have the tropical frogs, like even your bicolors and your white tree frogs, and then up to, let's say, the starry-eyed tree frog, the Agolignus dactycolor, or the Mexican waxy tree frog. Honestly, dude, like with them being dry, you know, the high temperatures for their basking spot, really, no, you probably don't need to clean that often either. You can go through and spot clean as long as you're changing out their water bowl. Like the water bowl is almost a must for some of these animals because they need that clean water source so that they will get eye infections.
Right.
Or they poop and pee in their water. That's not good for them.
Yeah, clean water every
as far as like
day.
that dry condition that desiccates out like a lot of the fecal matter. It's a lot easier to clean. There's a lot less risk for infections too because bacteria doesn't grow in that environment.
Yep.
Like it's not going to be, it might go dormant. So yeah, getting rid of it's a great idea. But a lot of these bacteria now, that's anything above 50 degrees C is enough to kill it within 20 minutes. So, and that's the one that we find the most prevalent in enclosures that are high humidity, like your red eyes or Cruzihyla sylviae, is the Pseudomonas bacteria. Like that's like the ones that you find like very similarly to like swimmers and pools and things like
Okay.
that because the high humid, high damp environment, that's the one that's most prevalent. So that dies at 50 degrees Celsius in 20 minutes.
Hmm.
So these higher temperature amphibians are perfectly fine, and it makes sense why like
Wow.
they don't need as much maintenance. Amazon tree frogs though, they need a little more maintenance because they're in the higher humidity end, like red eyes. So yeah, they need a little bit more upkeep than most,
All
even
right.
like a bioactive enclosure for them.
I got two questions. Still pretend I'm a beginner, and I bought an Amazon milk tree frog from you. I really want it. Okay, I'm done with the quarantine paper towels. I really want it on substrate because I have this cool planted bioactive terrarium. What do I need to know about putting a tree frog like that on some sort of substrate? What should it be? What should I be aware of? What are any concerns I should have?
The first thing we tell people, and I've had some photos that people are like, "Oh, I just built up," and I kind of feel bad for them too because they're really excited too, and I hate squashing that excitement. They're like, "Oh, I just built my first bioactive enclosure. I want to get the frogs. I understand I have to quarantine." Like they already know the things. I don't have to
Yep.
tell them much. The thing I have to tell them when I see the photo, unfortunately, is that's coconut. That's shredded coconut. You got to take all that out.
Yep.
That will mold within literally 24 hours if it's damp for too long. And they're like, really? I was like, yeah, like you, unfortunately, while they're on quarantine, spend the time. Unfortunately, you have to pull all of that out. They're not going to get all of it out, so removing all of the shredded coconut's not the priority here. It's getting most of it out, and then backfilling in with some type of ABG mix. You have a lot of reputable sources. Josh's Frogs makes it. Alex Monkey from Frog Daddy makes it. There's other hobbyists that make their own version of it. So that includes some type of portion of peat moss, tree fern, bark. What else does it have in it? A sphagnum moss. It
Yep.
has a few other charcoal. There's a few other handful. I
Yep.
can't remember the recipe because honestly, I don't use it. A lot of our tree frogs, they're on some type of modified organic soil mix that doesn't have perlite. And you have to be careful with some of those too. I haven't done that in a while, but the ones we did years ago seem to be holding up. Some of the organics can produce anaerobic bacteria growth, so you have to be careful on how damp they get for how long. So drainage is important. I really wish some of the tanks, and I know I'm kind of sidelining here a little bit, but I wish some of the tanks had more built-in drains to them. Oh my God, drainage for tree frogs is critical.
Yeah.
I found that out the hard way. I'm dealing with
Yeah.
tanks that are 6 years old, and I'm like, oh my God, why did I not drill a drain on the bottom of it? So an ABG mix is a good starting point for all your tree frogs, I would say. I would stay away from shredded coconut fiber, anything coconut based, because it will mold very quickly.
Yeah. And it goes.
Even Repti soil
Yep.
is not a good option.
It's mostly just peat moss, right? Yeah.
Uh, it has a lot of coconut, is my understanding in there,
Okay.
and it will mold fairly quickly. And like back to your comment about the red eyes and maintaining like that high humidity. Oh my God. And that's just like it snowballs from the soil is really, gross and nasty to the frogs. Then all of a sudden start getting stressed out and sick.
Yep.
Like it'll happen within a week.
Yep.
And especially if they're already stressed out because say they were field collected and you throw them in that kind of environment that they have no idea where they're at. They're stressed. Their immune system's probably like severely hampered because of the stress. That makes them prone even more to bacterial and fungal infections, which
Right.
now you've got the soil that's damp at the bottom that's prime for all of that. So that's kind of like how we explain it to people. Like these are why we don't recommend coconut based soils. ABG mix is a very good standardized type of, and it's the Atlantic Botanical Gardens mix. So like they're the ones that my understanding is, and I could be wrong, so I'm sure somebody will correct me if I am. They're the ones that set that standard for that type of soil mix, and that's kind of what's been prevalent in the hobby that works really well for tree frogs, white tree frogs, Amazon, red eyes, lemurs. Now, that being said, you can go as simple as pond filter foam as your substrate layer, and it
Yep.
also doubles as a drainage layer if you have a drain in the bottom already. And then you can get away with, pockets of some sphagnum moss and leaf litter. In that scenario, you're probably going to be replacing the leaf litter a little more often because your microfauna is not going to be, it'll take them longer to become established. So you get something like that decomposition layer that's a healthy decomposition. It's not an unhealthy organism or a pathogen at that point. So you're getting the breakdown of the leaves a little bit. They might mold a little bit, but it's not the mold that we're concerned about. Your cleanup crew will take care of
Yep.
that. So you can do that method. We've tried that a couple times, and I did like a 2 week study because we were trying to like make it easier for the hired help too for cleaning. Like I was looking at it going, okay, what's a good intermediate? One that's I can clean it a little easier, but it's not paper towels all the time. And that
Yeah,
seemed to work out pretty well for us. I was happy with it. It's just it's time consuming to switch everything
I bet.
over.
Yeah. A couple thoughts on that. Tree frogs in general, tropical tree frogs from the rainforest especially, in the wild don't interact with substrate very much. They're canopy dwellers.
Not, yeah.
They're on leaves and sticks and twigs. Probably the morning dew every day or the rain every afternoon washes all their fecal matter down into the forest floor, and they never walk on their own feces. When they are hunting insects in the canopy, they're not getting mouths full of dirt the way like a toad would. And so,
Yep.
I mean, I've never had an impaction issue. Some people have. I don't know how big of a concern it would be for you, but I think the layer of, if you're really committed to going bioactive, you figured out substrate, drainage layer, ABG mix, leaf litter, isopods, springtails. I think the leaf litter in a tree frog tank is pretty important. Maybe something big like magnolia leaf litter. Really,
You want it, yeah, you want it thick too
yep,
because you want to minimize their interaction with that soil as much as possible because even red eyes, they can stress out with too much soil on their body. So if
right.
they get stuff on their body and they can't get it off, they start kind of stressing a little bit because they can't kick it off, like, and it's on them all day, for 2 or 3 days until they go and soak and then it comes off. So yeah, like tree frog enclosures, I recommend an inch to 2 inches of leaf litter. It's going to compact a little bit,
Yeah.
but I would rather somebody spend extra money on leaf litter as opposed to more money on a vet bill because the animal
Hmm.
got sick and now they have to go get it treated for a bacterial infection.
Yep. The only issue that brings up is that maybe a lot of your crickets or other food items are going to hide in the leaf litter for a while, which isn't the
There's a
end.
solution for that.
What's that?
You can feeder station train.
Yeah, from a bowl or something.
We did. You can, yeah. So good example. We were asked to do this by the Louisiana University. They bought, I think it was like 40 red eyes from us for a nutrition study, and they bought them as juveniles. And they were like, okay, we want them at this size. We're doing bone density studies with a sonogram and X-rays to see, how do they develop based on certain diets. They asked us to feeder station train them. And I was like, huh, okay. I've never done that before, but sure, yeah, we can give it a shot. And
Cool.
it works just fine. Yeah, that was something that we were able to get all 40 of them. They were feeding out of a large Tupperware container, high-sided, so the crickets, some of them will get out, but for the most part, they can get on the edge, go down, grab their cricket, and they're gone.
Yeah.
So, that is a solution that, while unsightly a Tupperware container is, I'm sure people can get creative with something that looks more appealing to their pretty bioactive enclosure that they.
Yeah, I guess you could. Yeah, you could go shopping and get creative for that. I like the porcelain dog water dishes. They're like three
Mhm.
or $4 because of the porcelain enamel on them or whatever they're made out of. It's a really smooth surface that the insects can't climb, and if you use a small, lightweight, clear Tupperware, there's two things that's going to happen. The frog might try to eat the insect through the plastic and miss, or a big old frog like a White's tree frog hopping on the edge of a sandwich sized, it's just going to tip the plastic container up anyway.
Yep,
So the heavier dog water dishes that are made out of porcelain make pretty good feeder stations for a lot of different
they do.
frogs
Yep.
I've kept. Yeah.
We we use a lot of porcelain stuff too for some of the tanks with just like a few plants in them. Like our Mexican waxies have plants and they're enameled, they're easy to clean pots. So yeah, like something like that's easy to get even at Lowe's. Like you can get them on clearance for like probably $4 or $5
Cool.
too, depending on what you need.
Yep.
So
Okay, my last beginner question about our hypothetical Amazon milk frog shopping that I've done. Mark, I read your care sheet. I know the temperature and humidity requirements for this animal. I bought a digital temperature and humidity gauge. I put it in my tank, and the tank is too cold and the humidity is too low. Where should I start? I got to warm it up and I got to increase humidity. You already mentioned that I should probably cover part of the screen top.
right, yeah. So to start with, we'd probably do with the humidity control because that doesn't require moving the tank, whereas the temperature may require relocation. So let's focus on the humidity with getting them. Okay, let's cover it more. If it's already partially covered, okay, maybe it's not enough. Maybe your airflow or your AC or your heat's on, and that's where I talked about everybody's home's different. So really, it's hard for us to set hard and fast guidelines on you shall do this and
Yep.
it will
Exactly.
always work. No, that's not the case here. So we would probably ask them, hey, how much is it covered? Send me photos. Okay, let's cover it some more if it needs more covering, and that might just be a slide it further back so there's less exposed on that top screen vent. That's an easy fix. You'd see that change within minutes, right?
Yep.
That doesn't take too long for that to fix itself as long as there's a recent misting action that's happened in there. Temperature with the Amazon tree frogs, that's actually not too hard because they like a slightly higher temperature than some species. Like we have a 36-inch tall tank for them, and we do use this as a good example for people. You can do a low wattage heat bulb at the top that they can't get to. Put it in a spot that they can't actively get like right up against. So it might be more centrally located in the back, right? Because most people don't have things in the back. That way they can't perch under it, but they can get close enough that radiant heat's coming down. We do recommend that as a way for letting the frogs thermoregulate. Then they can go up, they can get warm. And if you find that they're up there more often, leave it on more often. Set it on the same timer that your 12-hour off light cycle is, to keep the temperature warm in the mornings, warm through the day. And yes, nighttime then, if it cools too much at night, that's a separate issue of it depends on where they have the frogs located. My first recommendation for people is find a warmer location in their home. So go around, get another temperature sensor.
Yep.
Go start measuring at least 4 locations for temperatures at night to see like what's the lowest it gets to. Because the reality is a couple nights, even a week with these frogs being outside of the range that I'm saying that they should be at, I already know my range is tighter than what they can actually subsist at. They can go much cooler than what I have on our care sheets. So even if it's slightly under, you got time.
Yep.
You got plenty of time. Like they're going to be fine. Is it ideal? Probably not. You'll probably see them eat less. You're going to go to the bathroom a little less. Their metabolism will slow down. But that's fine. It's not going to hurt them. So until the customer or the new frogger is trying to find a new location for temperature, we've got a good week or two to work within. If they can't find a location that's warmer, they've got some options that they can do a low wattage. For Amazons, again, it's a little easier because they're not prone to screen climbing.
Okay.
Never had an adult screen climb. I could be wrong, but I've never had it happen. So you could go with a low wattage ceramic bulb that turns on at night. So your basking bulb turns off, the ceramic turns on at night, and it's maybe 10 or 15 watts at most, and that's enough to keep it 2 degrees warmer.
Yep.
And really, if that's where we're at, that's all they need at night. Because some of these species, especially the Amazons, they can handle a 5 to 6 degree temperature drop from day to night anyways. So that's not unheard of anyways. So you got some options here. Either relocate, add supplemental heat. The other less desirable option that we do talk about is that you can add some type of reptile heat pad to some part of the enclosure, again, that the frogs can't get to, but it's going to add some latent heat. So if you're looking at like a bioactive enclosure, this is where it gets a little more tricky because you don't want to heat up the drainage area because that can expand quickly and crack your glass depending on how packed things are, how tightly packed they are. So we recommend you can put one somewhere on, like if you have a decorative foam background, you took a lot of time carving, you can put it on that and help get some radiant heat through. Now that's insulating too, unfortunately, so it doesn't always work the best. You can also find a higher spot of substrate like soil and leaf litter, get it there. So it'll warm up the soil and that'll radiate up through the leaf litter and give them a little more heat from below. Again, like I said, those are least desirable because there's a lot more managing that you have to do. You have to make sure the frogs aren't touching it, aren't getting close to it, aren't burrowing into the soil for some reason. Like white tree frogs will burrow sometimes, or they'll get under the leaf litter. You don't want them getting close to it. And since you would be in this scenario a new frogger, frogs do not have temperature sensors on their bellies. So you have to be careful that, it's that old adage of you put a frog in lukewarm water and raise the temperature up slowly, they're not going to realize that they're boiling. It's the same thing here, that we have to be careful and mindful of that same principle in their enclosure for heating it. And we've had, if you're in a position that they're able to fix that, that's great. We've had a few customers that haven't been able to purchase frogs because they can't find a good temperature in our home, and that's fine. Maybe frogs aren't for you because of your home temperatures. So I would hope that in this hypothetical that we've already had that discussion and that isn't where we end up
Yeah.
either. But yeah, supplemental heat. It's not ideal. Like my first inclination would be, well, warm the room up.
Yeah.
But I understand how
Yeah.
cost restrictive that is because, well, okay, does that mean now I have to heat my house more than I wanted to through the winter and it's warmer during the summer and I'm uncomfortable as the human for this
Yep.
little itty bitty frog?
Yep.
The other option is oil heaters are a safe way of raising the ambient temperature in a small room. They don't dry the air out as much as forced air, like a little space heater.
Yep.
These oil radiant heaters are perfect for that because then you could even put a fan near it, set it on a thermostat that it kicks some of the air around once it kicks on and starts heating the room up. That way it's not running as much too.
Right.
Like you can get creative on saving some money that you're not having to heat that room up as much and you're keeping the frogs 2 to 3 degrees warmer at nighttime specifically because nighttime's usually where we see more of the issues than daytime.
Yep.
You know, that nighttime drop where people like to sleep in like 60-degree weather.
Yep. If their house is just too cold for your frogs, send them my way and I'll sell them a newt.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
There you go.
Cool. Yeah, a couple of some thoughts about the heating pads. Over the years, I've tried a little bit of everything, and I found, I used a heating pad once on the bottom of a glass bioactive terrarium.
Mm-hmm.
The substrate to get the tank from like 70 to 76, the substrate was 92 degrees. Like that heating pad was because it just, a drainage layer of clay balls and 2 inches of ABG mix and leaf litter does not radiate heat. Heat does not like to move through that. It's almost like an insulator.
Oh yeah, it is completely insulating that. Yeah.
So that bottom.
That's why we recommend the side.
Yeah.
The side is the better option.
The side is the better option, but you better have a thermostat on that, and you better put the thermostat sensor touching the glass because that frog's going to be touching the glass. And so again, you're limiting. You never really want that glass surface that you're heating with a reptile heat pad. You don't want that glass surface to get more than 80 degrees.
Oh yeah, like I would be concerned if anything warmer that then you have a sudden mist, like an automatic mister kickoff, and then it suddenly cools that glass down. It's gonna crack it.
I didn't think of
that.
that.
That would be my biggest concern.
Yeah.
So yeah, so especially if you're fighting a cold room, that means that reservoir of misting water is probably going to be the same temperature as
Gotcha.
the
Yeah.
room too.
Good point.
So yeah, like that would be my biggest concern. I now that we've talked about this a little bit more too, I was remembering back to you can YouTube Manchester University. They have a video on the lemur leaf frog, and they show some snippets of the area that they keep their research animals in, and they actually use heat cables under their enclosures, but they don't, from what I could tell, they don't actually touch them. They run under the shelf, and it's enough, I guess, to radiate heat up from below, but it's not physically touching the enclosure.
Were they on paper towels or substrate?
I think paper towels. Again,
Yeah.
It was really hard for me to discern, and I might be making a leap that was heat cable, but it made the most sense in my mind of, I'm wondering if this is why they're doing that.
Yeah.
So that could be an option. Again, I don't like heat cables. I don't like heat pads. Those are all subjects and points of failure. I hate points of failure because that means, one, if they fail, it's not a consistent, repeatable environment for these animals to live in. They need consistency. That wouldn't be consistent if it's failing every other month. It's a bit of a risk for damage and injury to the animals and a lot of these supplemental heat options too. Like I get that.
Yep.
Like these are all considerations that the homeowner and the pet owner have to really kind of go, okay, well, what's the least amount of risk for me?
Yep.
And am I willing to take that? It's a tough decision when you're keeping amphibians, and not everybody can just go, oh, well, I guess this room is now just 78 degrees.
Every good frog keeper gets there one day, though.
Yeah. Well, and I have our staff come in, and they're like, oh God, it's always so warm in here. So they're coming in, they come change into shorts and a tank top and start working. And it's like, well, yeah, it is what it is. I don't know what to tell you.
Yep. One last question about humidity. Does every frog tank need a fogger and a misting system? Or what are the ways I should add water to my tree frog's tank?
I don't like foggers. They're cool looking. Let me start there. It gives you that really neat Instagram effect where you see somebody open up this brand new setup enclosure or something they've had growing that they went through and spent all day cleaning, because it never looks like that too after it's been growing in. And then they have all this fog rolling out from the back. Yeah, that's really cool looking. it doesn't provide any, in my mind, sustainable humidity. Because really what we're trying to do is make sure, and again, this comes back to, loops back around to consistent, stable environment. A fogger doesn't do that in my mind because it's such a fine particle of water that's being displaced that it just evaporates as quickly as you put it in there. It's not effectively bringing the humidity up for some of these animals to where it needs to be. And if it is, that means your soil is probably soggy and swamp-like at the bottom in some cases, depending on how you have it set up. So that's where you end up fighting that situation where, okay, the fogger's just running and running and running. Right now, my soil and my leaf litter are soaked, and now the frogs are walking on wet, damp stuff that they shouldn't be. So, yeah, I'm not a big fan of foggers.
Yep.
Misters, yes, they're probably the better way to go. The hardest part is getting it dialed into when it needs to go off and for how long. And again, that can vary, and people don't like to hear this, but that can vary even in the same room. You can move their enclosure to one spot and you find like, crap, like, why are they acting weird? Well, it's because like that airflow might be different in that spot. It might be more dry now, or it might be too wet and there's not enough airflow there. So you need to back off on your automatic misting system even more. So, yeah, it can be a struggle, but misters are definitely the way to go, in my opinion. Hand misting, depending on the species, is maybe all you need too, because some of these species, it's like, you might need like Sylviae, and I mist them when I clean them. I don't touch them in the mornings because of the way my room's set up. I go down, check everybody before I leave for work, and I found that I shouldn't be misting them. If I'm misting them in the morning, I'm either going to make them sick or there's something wrong in the room that I need to address because it's too dry. So yeah, like some of these species, you can get away with just hand misting, and that's a lot cheaper than an automatic mister.
Yeah,
too.
right, for sure.
I found I really like the digital electronic hand misters too, because we use those for a lot of cleaning. Those are great because you don't even have to pump them now. You just hold the button and spray it,
right,
and you're good.
Yeah, battery powered everything.
Yeah,
cool.
Not all of them are created equal. Like they'll give you a different misting pattern too. Like if people are going to do like an automatic misting system, it should be a Mist King nozzle. I don't care what you hook up to that nozzle, as long as it has the pressure to push through I'm sorry, I don't care what pump you pick, but you should be using their nozzles because, in my opinion, that gives the best misting distribution and particle size. You're not over soaking anything. It's better than a fogger. So that's really the route that we've gone, is like, yeah, I get their misting nozzles. I'll hook maybe a different pump up to it, but yeah, those are the best option if you're doing automated.
Yep, for sure. Yeah, that's the sort of thing, a beginner would ask a question like, hey, I bought this misting system. How many seconds per day am I supposed to spray this species of frog? And
I don't know.
There's no answer. And so, yeah, that's what I'm getting at with asking you these questions. Hopefully, if there's new people in the audience, we're just trying to teach you to think like an amphibian keeper. There's no set prescribed notion, because every room, every terrarium is different, and you have to sort of observe and experiment and do a little bit of figuring out for yourself on what's going to work.
I can give you a good example of this too. It was like 2 years ago. We had home construction. We had an addition put onto the home to expand space for the reptiles.
Yep.
During that period, we had change in airflow. Even once they broke through and put in, like we had the AC unit running in the new space. It was bad enough that I started having frogs getting sick because I didn't know what was going on.
Yeah.
Like, I was like, oh, they're getting sick. And then once I figured out that the airflow had changed, I then had to reconfigure where the tanks were at, and also all of my HEPA filters in the room I had to move around to get like the dead spots more airflow to keep things the way they needed to be. And that was a struggle. Oh my God. I spent probably 3 or 4 months of like sleepless nights worried about the animals because they were sick, and I was treating, mild red leg on some of the species that had never had it before. These were species that we've had for 3 or 4 years with no problem at all.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden I'm having problems all over the place. And it came back to, it was an airflow issue. And even new froggers or just amphibian keepers in general, they need to be mindful of seasonal changes.
Yep.
You hit spring and fall, your AC and heating unit is not running as much. That will change your room dynamic. You need to be a little bit more on top of the animals as far as like, oh, is everybody okay? Does everything look the way it used to? The moment you see somebody acting a little different, really need to start honing in on, well, okay, what time of year is it? Okay, this is what changed. Okay, maybe I need to back off on my misting because there's not as much volume of air being moved around. Even as a, I'm not even experienced. I'd say I'm still a beginner keeper, honestly, even with 6 years of experience, because that was a foreign thing to me to have to experience that all of these animals, like, it's like, what is happening? What am I doing wrong here?
Right.
That was just such a, oh man, it deflated my confidence so much because you thought you had things dialed in, and then all of a sudden, like, you feel like you're doing everything wrong. And all it was seasonal change.
Yeah. I'm
Have
glad
fun.
I'm glad you pushed through it, because that is the sort of thing, as soon as you've been keeping animals for a few years and then they start getting sick and you're not exactly sure why, especially if some animals start dying, that's sometimes enough for people to throw in the towel. So I'm glad you figured it out.
Yeah, not to sideline too much, but yeah, like, and then this is where it kind of feeds back into, we want people to have a good experience. We do not want them to have this traumatic experience of, oh my God, I did something horribly wrong. This animal died in my care.
Yeah.
I know people, I know probably 90% of the people we interact with take that to heart, and they should. I get it. I would too. So I don't want to set them up for failure. We want to set them up for success. And I guess maybe this is one of those scenarios where, okay, it was a learning curve for me and some like humility or resetting my humility on, like, oh, okay, I guess I really don't know everything still, and that's fine. But now I can pass these stories on to people. Hey, this is what happened.
Yeah.
You know, I've had this experience. You can get through it. You know, it's not the end of the world, and that's like also why we want people to contact us as soon as they see something they think's off with the animals that they got from us. We can get you through it in most cases. We can figure it out. We can get you there, even if it is a, hey, get to your vet, get them treated. We know what this is. Don't wait.
Yeah.
You know, even if that's where we're at. So really, communication for us is key because we've made a lot of mistakes and we've learned
Sure.
from them. So
Yeah, in the world of amphibian information, care information, temperature and humidity is always mentioned, but I don't think you can mention them without using the word ventilation, because how well ventilated a tank is affects both the temperature and the humidity. With something like tree frog, ventilation is very good and necessary, and you should you shouldn't be looking to seal the tank up completely as a way to boost
right.
ventilation. You should try to add humidity while maintaining as much ventilation as possible. Whereas with dart frogs, you can get away with that. You can really seal up the tank and have a lot less ventilation, and they'll do okay. Like I said, you can get away with that with dart frogs and maybe some other species as well.
Yeah, there's a caveat with the dart frogs though too, and I've seen this in some photos on Facebook. The light sitting directly on in contact with the glass on top of the dart frog enclosure.
Yep.
If you've got a sealed tank, oh, buddy boy, like that's dangerous territory because that temperature in there can get out of control without you realizing it.
Yep.
And we've had that happen. Had that happen too, where it wasn't even a glass enclosure; it was a plastic grow out tub that the light had fallen down onto, and I didn't see it. And I was going through and doing my rounds for feeding, found the tote while I was feeding. I was like, oh, well, okay, that's fine. And I open it up, and everybody's like congregated in the one corner, and I'm like scratching my head, going, all right, well, let me go get a temperature gun. And sure enough, like measured the temperature, and it was 82 degrees in there. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, yeah, we can't have that happen again. Got things more secured. And yeah, so like lights being in contact with glass for dart frogs can be dangerous. On the converse side, though, that can help you with your heating issue on tree frogs. Put that LED light smack on top if you're having heating problems. You'll get an extra degree or two in that tank. And then it's on your normal light cycle too. So that temperature drop at night happens. I've used that trick before too during the winter where it's like, well, yeah, we'll just drop the lights down. That'll be fine. That's an extra degree or two. That'll help. And
Okay.
it does.
Yep. Yep.
Especially if it's at the top of the tank too, because it helps with, you're getting that top layer heated up, so you're assisting your ventilation too with the evaporation effect at the top out through the screen, so that's pulling some of that lower humidity up, that chimney effect that we always want in our tree frog enclosures. So, that helps. And it's little tricks like that, yeah, I'm cheap, and like, again, I don't like points of failure, so if I can get a degree or two out of the light that I'm already using, why not?
Awesome. All right, I'm done talking about beginner species. I'm curious about the Cruzia hyla sylviae that you keep. You've had them for a few years. You've successfully bred them a little bit. I've never had any Cruzia hyla. Like I've mentioned, I've had red-eyed tree frogs. So tell me a little bit about the differences between what I would need to know if I wanted to get into Cruzia Hyla myself.
Right now, I would say let's pick a species because the two most common Cruzia hyla is Craspidopsis and Sylviae. And
Yep.
Sylviae is less common. I'll be honest about
Yep.
that.
Lately.
So it really yeah, I'm trying to change that. I really am. It's kind of pick your preference there, which one looks more pretty. I don't have as much experience with the fringe frog, the Craspidopsis. Their care, from my understanding, is similar to Sylviae. You know, you're wanting slightly warmer temperature at periods. They can't be as wet as often, and I know I'm being vague on them because I don't know the details.
Yeah,
I
that's
actually
fine.
don't have them. I would like to get them at some point, and then I could provide a little bit more feedback on how to keep them. I'm using more anecdotal references from other breeders that I've talked to, and again, I could be wrong. Now for the Sylviae, their requirements, they're kind of in this weird mix of, they're like a red eye, but they like a little drier. So our average humidity in the afternoon is more like our Mexican waxy leaf frogs. Well, they'll go down to like 60%
Yep.
humidity,
Yep.
and like their tank will be kind of dry and spike to 80% humidity at night. I found that if you deviate, at least in our space, from those two parameters, they get eye infections, and they're really prone to eye infections if they're not kept correctly. Now, the eye infection would be on the higher humidity side,
Yeah.
obviously. Lower side, if you kept them too dry, I can imagine that they're just going to generally be unhappy and probably prolapse because they're dehydrated, or spend more time in their water bowl than they should, and then probably get an eye infection because they're always wet.
Yeah.
Take your pick. Like, I haven't experienced that scenario. So when we first brought them in, probably 2.5, 3 years ago at this point, they came in as juveniles from Europe. We met a breeder on Facebook that was, for some odd reason, was like, I asked him if, hey, can I get these from you? Because nobody has them in the US. He thought about it. He's like, yeah, sure, let's do it. If you can figure out how to get them over there, I'll sell them to you. So we worked out the details with a company in the US that was able to make contact for shipping for me. And we got 10 froglets in. And this goes back to like the humidity and the change in the environment. Like, I'd had these froglets for a year. They'd grown up to adults, and then females get, 3.5, 4 inches in length, and they're doing great. And I'm like, man, it's great. I'm ready for breeding. Man, they got eye infections the next week. All of them. And like, you can tell, like, even now that I know what I'm looking for, you can tell around the orbital. Like, if it starts looking weird, it's like, nope, nope. I need to back off into humidity because like, you're getting stressed and it's starting to cause a problem. It needs to dry out. So usually if you can get it dried out a little bit, the bacteria doesn't seem to be able to take a foothold as long around the eye. It just drop it down on the humidity, and that seems to help. Now, if it goes past a point, then you have to medicate. But yeah, they all got sick, so I had to medicate them myself because I don't have access to an amphibian vet.
Yeah.
And I understand that's a big issue for this whole topic, is that there aren't vets that know a lot about amphibians either on treatment.
Right.
Therefore, first line of defense is, well, it's prolapse. No, you euthanize it. I really don't want to.
Yeah.
So yeah, they got eye infections, and that was a good month of me getting them cleared up. And that was a learning experience was keeping them too wet in the evenings. Like, they were 90 to 100% at night, and then they were super soggy in the morning, and that just led to that situation where they were just stressed out, not healthy, compromised immune system, got an eye infection. So they can be kind of tricky there if I deviate from those parameters here. Since then, I haven't had an issue. Even in and out of our rain chamber for 3 or 4 days, I have not had an eye infection again. And they can be fairly temperamental in the rain chambers too, that if they're in there for too long, and this is also anecdotal from other breeders that had them years ago, that yeah, you can run into problems out of the rain chamber too with them. So they can be finicky. Temperature wise, like the red eye, they can do 76 to 78 during the day and go down into like the low 70s. The breeder we got ours from originally said he'd been to, I am going to butcher the name on this one, but it's a Sickery location in Costa Rica where they're endemic to.
Okay.
And he measured the temperature down to like 67 degrees Fahrenheit.
Yep.
In that cloud forest area. And I'm like, oh wow, that's chilly. So yeah, you can go down to the high 60s with these guys at night. And then you can go up to like 82, 83 during the day. Ours are set up that they have like a timing system that I worked out that seems to do really well for them. It's an every other day system that the heating bulb and a UVB bulb kicks on for 30 minutes and then shuts off, and it doesn't happen until the other day. Like, so if it's
Okay.
on Monday, it comes back on Wednesday and comes back on Friday and then cycles back through again. And that seems to do really well for them. They
This
eat
is
really well.
this is basking heat and UV.
Yeah, they don't really use, it's not even, they're basking bulbs. They don't
Right.
bask in it.
Okay.
It's just, it bumps the enclosure and temperature up to like 82 degrees for that half hour. And then, it's going to slowly decline through the afternoon as it cools back down. In my mind, that seemed to simulate like the high peak of the sun for the day.
Yeah.
And no, you're not getting it every day because, well, there might be clouds and the sun's not out, especially in that cloud forest region. I've never been there. I can only imagine what it might be like. So I'm trying to simulate that the best I can with the equipment we have.
Cool.
Could I do it every day? Maybe, but it seems like this is working for them. And the microdosing on the UVB seems to help too. We've actually pulled all of our UVB from all of our tree frogs. I don't use it anymore except for them. I found that we aren't set up that we can do it the way I want to. And I think I would want to do it for all of our tree frogs the way I'm doing it for the Sylviae, where it only comes on for like a half hour, a couple days a week.
Yeah.
The idea that the UVB is like full blaring all the time, 6 to 7% is a mistake. And I've seen it with the health of the animals where they seem to do better when I pulled it off. And I was like, all right, well, you're doing better without it. I will find a way at some point in the future to add it back in as a microdosing system with a timer through Alexa or whatever, because that's how I had the Sylviae set up. That's where we're headed, and I'm looking forward to getting back to that, but there's too many things right now.
Yeah. To the best of my tracking of the amphibian hobby over the last 15 years or so, that's always been sort of people's approach with frogs. When we first started putting UV on dart frogs, it was like an hour a day, half hour a day.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I remember. I don't know if I've missed the boat on people experimenting with different things. I myself, my Mantella, between my 4 large Mantella enclosures, I have one UVB bulb, and they share it because it moves every day. So they are on a 4-day rotation, I guess, just because they're sharing the bulb and they're getting it for 1 hour mid morning every 4th day, depending. So moving that around, yeah. So I think that's pretty reasonable. That's interesting. Cool. So your Cruzio Hyla Sylviae, keeping ventilation and humidity is super important on them, is what I'm gathering from you.
Yep.
Other than dusted, gut-loaded crickets, are you feeding them anything different?
No.
Okay.
And I don't want to say that you can't.
Sure.
Like, yeah, don't take that as a, oh no, I would never do that. No,
Right.
I don't want to say that people can't. That's the food source we give them. So we have in-house, we create our own gut load that we do sell through the business too as well, but we use it ourselves on our crickets. So we gut load the crickets. We're doing the dusting supplement regimen that we use for all the tree frogs. So Calcium Plus from Repashy. I do use carotenoid, their super pig for the Sylviae as well, because they got that nice yellow belly.
Yep.
And after I'm done explaining this, I can go grab one and maybe show you what it looks like, because it's even more pronounced than the froglets too, which is just like, it's pretty. The carotenoids seem to help enhance that. I've noticed that they tend to get more yellow the more often they get that. And I'm not saying we overdo it, but once or twice a month is sufficient. There's also a product by Repashy called Supervite that has the vitamin A in it that we use for our tree frogs, but it also has turmeric in it, which my understanding is that also helps with the yellows and also their immune system too in some instances, anecdotally.
Right.
I will add. So right now, those are the 3 that we're using to supplement, and the vitamin A we do twice a month as well. I don't do heavy on that because it's the same idea with the dart frogs. You don't want to overdose them too much. I don't have any data that says how much they store and how often they use it, and it depletes out of their body. So use with caution, I guess, is the take home from that.
Yep.
Twice a month seems to do us well, and I haven't had any issues. And since the first clutch was laid 2 years ago, we haven't had issues with infertility in the eggs either. Like, I only bred them once this year, and all 27 of the froglets are doing fine. I got all the eggs recovered.
Yep.
Haven't had any issues.
Yep.
So yeah, let me go grab one of those real quick if you want to see
Do
one.
it. That's awesome. Thanks. All the more reasons for people to check this out on YouTube, or if your podcast platform supports video, You can take a look at these cool Crusiohyla sylviae.
I will add too that yes, I don't have gloves on. I wash my hands. I've been cleaning these guys all day. Like I went through and cleaned even the glass behind me because I knew we were doing this. I was like,
Nice.
I'll go through and make everything look like really, really good. So I did spend some extra time today. So here is one of the females. So you can see, like, yeah, there we go. That's probably better. Hand size comparison. I don't have giant hands. They're not small either. And then this is a male.
Awesome.
So let's see if we can, I don't know if I can get them side by side here for the camera. No, they're not cooperating. But there definitely is a size difference between male and females. And you can see, there we go, right on the screen. That orange color on the bottom, that turmeric and super pig seem to really help out with that
Great.
coloration. Now, I will say, you're looking at a gray blue frog, right? That's what you're perceiving on your side,
Sure. Yeah.
on the dorsal side. Yeah. So the wild variants have more forest green color to them in
Yep.
some instances. So your captive individuals are going to be slightly different, but you see that in the red-eyed tree frogs
It's
too.
true
Like
for
they're not,
everything. Yep.
yeah, like there's something that we're missing that we don't know exactly how to do it that's giving them the right store of nutrients that translates from tadpole to, and I'm hypothesizing here too,
Yeah,
by the
I hear
way.
you.
It's the same as the calcium stores as a tadpole. They store calcium in their body to then turn and metamorph into the froglet.
Right.
I'm almost betting there's something there that they're not getting in the United States, at least at a minimum, because you see it different in the Europe. Like
Hmm.
their colorations tend to be slightly different, but that tadpole phase, they're not getting the right nutrient to get the coloration, I think.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's
even,
pretty strange, but yeah, that's a phenomenon, especially seen in tree frogs. Like a wild collected adult will keep its vibrant green color. It won't fade to like turquoise or bluish or grayish in
right.
captivity. Like almost all the captive born stuff through a huge variety of species, they look like this like gray, blue, teal, not this like
Yep.
rich green color.
You bring up a good point too. Like your wild or your field collected individuals that come in retain their original wild
Right.
coloration. They don't fade out unless it's like a yellow red. Like those can fade out, but that's a supplementation on carotenoids we figured out, right?
Yep.
At least for the
Yep.
dart frogs and most of your tree frogs are similar. So, they're not fading out, which really led me to believe like, hey, okay, this has to be in like the tadpole
Huh.
stage. What are we not giving them? And the reality is, as a business owner, I see and understand that people don't have the time to put into doing the research for it. Like that's
Yeah.
time consuming and data intensive and measurements and things like that yeah, no, I get it. It's cost prohibitive to figure it out. And the animals are doing just fine as is. So I
Yep.
don't know if we'll ever get a true feel for what it really is, at least in the next decade.
Right.
All right, let me get these guys back in before they get too wily.
Yeah, go for it. I really like those Crusiohyla. They're heavier bodied than a red-eyed tree frog, which is just such a slender, long-limbed tree frog. They just have such a unique look to them with those really thick
Yeah,
those thick hands too. I like it.
yeah, I call them meat hooks because
Yep.
they're just so big,
Yep.
and they really don't do like the shovel method like Amazon or whites do whenever they feed. Like they definitely like they hit it like a red eye.
Yep. Okay.
Like and it's gone. At that point it's gone. Like they're on it. It's disappeared at that point. So the feeding response is really cool too because they'll even bounce their butt as they're getting ready to spring forward. So you can definitely like if
Cool.
you're watching them, you're like, oh yeah, he's got one lined up, and then sure enough, yeah,
Yeah.
it's really neat.
Do they spend the day on the glass, on a leaf, or on a perch?
So that's actually something that was different for us. I had to buy a different plant for them. So they have a yeah, I don't know, it's a philodendron of some sort. So more horizontal leaves that are more sturdy, obviously
To
from the
support that
weight.
big frog? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So the females are pushing 70 to 80 grams, just for reference. And I know it's grams, it's not English.
Yep.
Go do the conversion. I don't know what it is, but they're about 80 grams at like whenever they're gravid. So you need something sturdy and horizontal. That's where they tend to spend most of their time. They'll go in, sit on those leaves at a horizontal position, and they're done. They're very, they're less prone to perching on the side of the glass like a red eye. So like red
Right.
eyes, you basically, if you didn't give them anything, they'd be perfectly fine because they're
They're
going to go
happy on the
vertical on the
glass.
glass.
Even if you do give them
Yeah,
something, they like the glass.
yeah, exactly. And really that's how I gauge like how well they're doing too, because if they're on the paper towel on the bottom, there's a problem. Like
Yep.
that to me is like, that's not normal for a red eye. There's a problem. I need to be looking into this. And this is where knowing your animals as a new frogger, like this is why people can't jump into getting like all 10 species that they want at the same time, because you're going to figuring this stuff out is going to take a while for somebody. But these guys, they'll even lay on the bottom. So on the paper towel substrate for the breeders, yeah, they're all lined up on the bottom on the paper towel. I'll give them jackfruit leaves to lay on too, that they seem to like, just to keep them off the damper paper towel. Gives them a dry spot,
right.
really, to sit on. That way they're not in contact with a damp area all day long either. So those are the tips and tricks that I found out that works the best. That, you know, if you're on paper towel with them, okay, throw some big leaves in there on the bottom, give them a sturdy plant that has horizontal leaves on it. Even a philodendron, I think it's Bakiri. I mean, I could be wrong too. There's a Birkin, that's what it is. Birkin would work well too, because it's got like those big leaves. Yeah, that would work. Something that gives them space to lay for the day that's not in a damp area is best for them.
Cool. Yeah, that's something interesting to know. Some tree frogs, like some of the smaller tree frog species, like Dendrosophis, they like to be on the underside of a leaf, or glass frogs, for example. Glass frogs are always on the underside of a leaf. You already mentioned red-eyes love being on the glass. Phylomedusa bicolor, they perch. They want to stick. They want to be basking on a stick. I don't know. Your Agalicnus stachnycolor, where do they like to perch? I've never seen them.
They're kind of a mixed, like they're not small frogs. Like, they're big.
Right.
And I'll find them perched like a red eye on the side of the glass.
Okay.
And then others of like, I've got a group of 12, and like they're all in different spots. Some of them are on the glass, some of them are under the basking bulb over on the bamboo stick. Some of them are on, like, I have like it's a flat elevated thing that's angled, so they kind of line up on that for the day too.
Yep.
So it really just depends.
Yep. I'm talking to another guest who is real into 3D printing for tree frogs, and maybe there's a 3D printed leaf that would be real nice for the
sturdy enough,
nice sturdy thick piece of plastic instead of a philodendron, that you can wash and keep clean.
Yeah, that's the biggest thing. Like, trying to get stuff that you can keep clean easily can be a challenge.
Sure.
And unfortunately, it ends up being, as a breeder, I'm less concerned about this. It's not visually appealing. Like, it just looks like, oh, I went and got PVC pipe. Well, that's because it's easy to clean and it's perfectly fine for the purpose that we're using.
Right.
Does somebody want that in their display enclosure? Probably not. They want something different. They want it to look like a piece of the jungle, and that's where the hard part of finding things comes in.
Sure.
Like, it's very challenging.
Yeah. Well, then, before one or two more topics before we wrap up. Tadpoles, how, as you know, I breed tree frogs and other frogs as well. I'm always interested to know how other people, especially at scale, are setting up and maintaining clean water for tadpoles. So what's your system? What's your method for raising all these tree frog tadpoles?
It depends on, I will say it depends on the species.
Yep.
So let's look at your more true leaf frog tree frogs like Agolignus versus, say, a Theloderma.
Yep.
And I'm not sure, new people, the frogs that are watching this, Theloderma include a lot of your bug-eyed Vietnamese frogs, and also any type of mossy frog. Those are general terms for some of these animals that the species names are, Theloderma cortical, Theloderma asperum, or Theloderma pictus. They're semi-aquatic species from Southeast Asia. The husbandry is a lot different, so their tadpole rearing is a lot different too for me than, say, a Central America neotropical species like red-eyed tree frog or even lemur leaf frogs. So with the Agolignus genus in specific, we do communal raising on the tadpoles. The take home there is you want to not overload your space that you're raising the tadpoles in for the number of tadpoles.
Yep.
So you want to make sure it's appropriately sized. And I'm being somewhat generic there because we do, somebody might flame me for this, but we'll do probably 30 tadpoles in a 10-gallon tank for a period of time. The thought there is that we have a larger 20-gallon setup that, okay, once they start getting bigger, we start separating them out. You will have some loss in those tadpoles. Like, there's loss everywhere, and that's also a discussion that it's hard to have with new people because they're pets for people, so they're really invested in their health. And I understand that too because we're pet owners as well, but there's loss at every step. There's loss at hatching from the eggs. There's loss at tadpole development. There's loss at the tadpoles turning into froglets because they didn't metamorph correctly. They may have morphed correctly visually, and then you can have loss at the juvenile stage as well, where the froglet had something wrong internally that you can't see, right? So they failure to thrive. So with the 10-gallon tank and 20 or 30 tadpoles in that gives us time to see, okay, who's growing at what rate, because they'll all grow relatively close together. You'll definitely have some stragglers that may have been the last ones to hatch out, so they are far behind everybody. You don't want them in there competing with the larger tadpoles for food, so we move the larger ones up to the bigger tank, keep the smaller ones in the smaller tank until they either grow or they just stay that size and they're there forever.
Yeah.
Now, that does become, like, as a breeder, and this is where I don't know if people have a good perception of this or not. I've never been able to get a good feel, but the amount of space that's required to just raise tree frogs is immense. If you look at my example there of a 10-gallon and a 20-gallon, well, let's just say for 20 to 50 tadpoles. I have more than that coming out of the water in some cases. So, like, you're now into 6 to 8 tadpole tanks of those sizes just to maintain enough space for everybody and filtration and things like that. So as far as the tank setup is concerned, we do heat the water with heaters. They're neotropical species for the Agolignus, so you're looking 76 to 79 degrees water temperature. We used to just use foam filters, and that'll get you by. You can use sponge filters. You're doing more water changes more regularly because, like, that ammonia buildup has to be maintained in some fashion. You either need to filter it out with a biological filtration of some type of organism that's going to eat that ammonia and turn it into nitrates that then can be disposed of differently, or you need to do water changes and get it out of there and dilute it out. Half water changes every day is where you're at with a sponge filter, basically. So yeah, it's labor intensive. Like, that's a lot of work. And I can remember days of doing that before I went to work because I didn't have time in the evening to do it. So I'm down there sloshing water around, doing water changes on all the tadpole tanks because we were on sponge filters. And that's what you had to do to get them to thrive and grow the way they're supposed to. We've since moved to canister filters, which can be cost prohibitive. Yeah, like it's an investment.
For sure.
And I do tell people too that, hey, when you buy animals from us, you're investing in our ability to keep moving forward with giving these animals the best care that we can. A lot of our money goes into hardware upgrades. So canister filters was one of those. It makes my life easier, and it's also easier to maintain the water quality, especially with a biological filtration system. You're able to convert your nitrates over, or your ammonia over into nitrates, and then if you've got enough havifern in there, that also manages the nitrate level. Then it's for your tank setup as well. So it gives you more flexibility that you don't have these sudden changes in chemistry for the tadpoles. It's a more even up and down, or less, peaks and troughs in the oscillation of those chemicals. I found that seems to work better. So we've, canister filtration seems to be working for Agolignus. Sylviae do well with that for the tadpole rearing. What other species? The Amazon milk frogs, we just did that way too this year. We did them prior on sponge filters, and it was okay.
Mm-hmm.
This year that we were able to actually have a couple hundred come out of the water on canister filtration, and they look so much better. They're eating better. They're transitioning over to bigger food sizes quicker and better. So we're seeing we've invested in better tadpole rearing equipment. It's showing results in the froglet growth and development too.
Cool.
Now back to the Theloderma, their care is different. Like, that's sponge filters all the way because they're not producing the amount of ammonia that your tropical tree frog species can produce. Yeah, they're still producing it, but I can easily manage that with a sponge filter and partial water changes.
Yeah, they don't lay hundreds of eggs. They don't at the same time either.
Correct. Yeah, the tricky part with those, though, is keeping them cool enough that you can get your male-female ratios out correctly.
Yeah,
like that's a whole nother mixed bag. That's a whole nother topic, I think, for another.
I have a guest
podcast.
I have a guest coming on who does 5 or 6 different Theloderma species, so we'll get the lowdown from him soon.
Yeah, there you go.
Yep.
Probably knows more about it than I do because I've just started trying to get that figured out and worked into my workflow at this point.
I imagine if you move to canister filters, you're probably trying to use fewer but larger aquariums. Is that true? Maybe not.
No, the 10 gallons are still on canister filters.
Okay.
No, and And mainly probably because that's what I have.
Yep.
If resources weren't an issue on like, oh, I could just spend money willy-nilly,
Yeah.
yeah, I probably would just be like, okay, we're doing a line of 20 gallons or something silly like that, okay, yeah, they all go in. The other thing is like these guys hatch out really small, so having an aquarium, a 20 gallon aquarium filled to the brim isn't needed for when they first hatch out. You can drop the volume down, and canister filters, you have to be careful on how far you go down. So 10 gallons, that still works out that I can start off at a lower volume with the smaller tadpoles. And then as they get bigger, volume in the tank increases with them, and then they get transitioned. So
Cool.
it seems to work, at least in my brain. Like, I don't know, it might logic out some way different for somebody
That's
else.
cool. Yeah. Awesome. I recently completely redid my newt setup in my basement. When I look at it, it looks like it could also be repurposed for tadpole rearing, right? Newts and newt larvae, aquatic, living aquatic. Yep. Everyone needs filtration. Everyone needs water changes. And so my life is going to improve because every single tank is drilled with a drain. So no more siphoning water for me.
Yeah.
That's going to be a big deal. You know, for years, I've been dealing with undrilled tanks. But now they all have a bulkhead and a drain valve. So that's going to be awesome. And what I used, there's clear polycarbonate food service tubs, and I discovered them. The people who keep green tree pythons use them for juveniles. I don't know why or how they found them. But
You're not the only one I've heard that uses those.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard a couple other people
They're
do.
pretty cool. I liked them because I don't like carrying glass aquariums outside to clean. And when it's time to like scrub them clean, they're heavy, they're hard to move, they're made out of glass. So these polycarbonate tubs, I could drill I could drill them for bulkheads without worrying about cracking glass. They nest when it's time to clean them. They nest inside of each other. I can carry like 8 of them at a time outside to scrub clean with the hose.
Yep.
So yeah, that's pretty cool. And I'll need to set.
I think the only reason I haven't considered polycarbonate is I'd be concerned about retention of any type of cleaning agents. So as long as we're not like cleaning them with like harsh chemicals that might get retained, because I've had weird instances like, and this was back in my high school days when I was raising guppies with my dad in his biology classroom. We had a tank that we literally could not use because whatever they'd put in it was leaching into the water and killing the fish right away.
Wow. Yeah.
So that's kind of why like I have to be careful with like plastics around here. I'll use them for grow out tubs and I clean them sparingly with sterilizing agents. But yeah, like if you let stuff like, if you're a forgetful person and you're like, oh, I'm going to spray this stuff out or put cleaning stuff in and let it soak, and you come back to it the next day, some of that stuff you must just, not you personally, but if somebody does, it's like, just throw it out.
Yeah.
Like the risk level there, unfortunately, of like what will leach out of that is
for sure.
That could make you, you could be chasing your tail on problems that you just created.
Yeah. I haven't dived down that rabbit hole of plastic leaching. I do know polycarbonate is generally considered a little bit more sturdy of a chemical compound than a lot of the plastic containers that you just buy for storage from Walmart or whatever.
Yeah. Polycarbonate, PETG, which is polyether something or other. We use those in the pharmaceutical side of stuff, and those are fairly inert and benign, so they don't leach. They're not supposed to bind to anything or retain anything is the intent there. So they're the best options now. They are more expensive.
Right.
I will say that those materials cost more than say like your, Sterilite gasketed totes.
Yeah. All right. Last thing I wanted to ask you about, you mentioned the Manchester Museum because the guy working there, I think Cruzius Silviae, did he help discover and name it?
That was Andrew Gray.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
My understanding is that he had spent 20 some years, and I'm paraphrasing here, so there's information that people can go look up if they hear this. He spent 20 years working with the species, going to their habitat, documenting, getting data. The thing he was trying to work on proving, or at least found out while he was doing this research, is that Cruziahyla silviae and Calcarifer were thought to be the same species. He was able to prove, genetically speaking, that they are 2 distinct species, which then became, Calcarifer was then split off into the populations of Silviae. He named the species, since he discovered it, after his granddaughter, Sylvia,
Yep.
was my understanding of how that story goes. So they are, the common name is Sylvia's tree frog, and then Cruziahyla sylviae, with that being in the scientific name. And he's done a few interviews where it's a neat story.
Yeah.
Like, I'm happy for him. Like, it's like 20 years or plus work
Yeah.
of doing this, and I think that was just delineated and set in stone like 2016. So in the grand scheme of things, that's not been that long ago.
Yep. So he got to name this frog. He studied it for 2 decades. The Manchester Museum is sort of known worldwide for pretty like the standard of care for tropical tree frogs. They set the bar for it. And I remember seeing years ago in one of their YouTube videos, that's where I noticed that their tropical tree frogs were not kept on substrate. They were kept with just like a plastic egg crate false bottom with no
Hmm.
paper towels, no substrate. And I thought that was really interesting. I've been considering, if I'm going to upgrade my own red-eyed tree frogs, I might consider going to that method where you build a plastic egg crate false bottom, maybe use window screen or plastic needlepoint mesh to make sure like crickets aren't falling through or whatever. And maybe the idea is that I could spray down that tank pretty heavy and everything's going to go below the false bottom to drain away, and I can keep sort of that tree frog environment plenty humid, plenty warm, and pretty clean. What do you have you looked at that
Yeah,
before?
I've looked at it. I've thought about it. I've seen people use that same method for dart frogs too.
Yeah.
It's a few people I've seen where they've had videos where they're raising froglets for dart frogs, and it's like, oh, it's easier for me to spray everything down, like you said, and clean everything out. Like, it's just dropping down through, and then it gets flushed out through a drain, right? That's
Yeah.
the intent. I think I'm not sure how I feel about it, because I know after dealing with Louisiana University, they're setting up these rooms, the climate controlled rooms. So they already have that room set at the temperature it needs to be, and about the relative humidity it needs to be.
Yeah.
So they're not maybe as concerned about maintaining humidity in this local box like we are. So they're able to do that kind of false bottom where it just kind of goes through and goes out of drain, and there's nothing there. It's
Yeah.
it's nothing for the frogs to be on except the clean surface. I don't know how that would work with like our closed little ecosystems we do in an 18-18-24. I don't want to say it can't work. I as a breeder am very hesitant on implementing new strategies, because anytime you add something new while you're trying to make something better, it,
Yep.
it can actually create 10 more problems for you that you now have to find solutions for if you want to continue doing that going forward. Like, and that to me is like the level of panic that makes me feel sometimes keeps me from doing things like that.
Right on. Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I'm just like, oh God, I don't want to do this.
Right. My frog room is
But now,
in a basement, and so humidity, I'm actually constantly battling. I'm always running a dehumidifier. I'm always trying to keep humidity. I'm trying to keep
oh,
it
okay.
down to 60. If I do nothing, it skyrockets to 90. So something like that might work in my unique situation. I don't know what your frog rooms, what's the relative humidity in there if you're not managing it?
It is kind of on the other side. I have a dry problem.
Yep.
It's usually about 45 to 50%.
Yep.
It's We're in a basement setting, but it's a finished basement. So like the heating system's plumbed into the rest of the house, things like that. So like
Right.
I'm getting the same type of drying effect that the rest of the house is seeing. It can still be just as challenging as what you're experiencing, just on the opposite end, where yeah, now I gotta like manage, okay, these tanks on this side of the room only get sprayed for this amount of time. These ones over
Yeah.
here, oh, they get sprayed more or something different. So even things like that, I was talking about change. Like, yeah, oh my God, even changing locations in the room can be somewhat problematic, that you kind of test it out. Like, at least this is what I do. I'll test it out for a little bit and see, okay, do I like it? Is everything where I want it to be? And if I feel weird about it, everything goes back to the way it was, until I can think, like, I can put some, processing power into thinking about, okay, this is what I saw, this is what I liked about it, this is what I didn't like about that change. And unfortunately, it makes me prone to being slow about implementing changes. One of our employees, she's been great, doing good work, and she kind of has been pushing with, well, you could get these things into bioactive enclosures and it'd be less maintenance, this, that, the other thing. And I'm like, that could. Yeah, I certainly could. They're breeders, so like they're in and out of the rain chamber periodically. So now back into bioactive, like we talked about earlier, It's harder to monitor their overall health and what they're doing and things like that. And a change like that is up here, like it's so like daunting that it's like, well, that might be my 5-year plan.
Right on. Yeah. Yeah. Cool. Well, thanks for this conversation. One of my goals for the podcast is if new people are listening, I want to teach them how to think like a frog keeper or think like an amphibian keeper. And so I think a lot of parts of our conversation has led to that goal. And the other thing that I want this podcast to be is sort of a hub for information. I talked about this in my very first introductory podcast that years ago, information, there wasn't as much of it all over the internet. We were looking at books. We were looking at 1 or 2 forums on the internet. Fast forward 20 years, there's a lot of information out there, but it's spread out. Not all of it is trustworthy. It's contradictory. It's hard to find. I don't think that I'm going to present all the information that there is to know because I don't know it. I know you'd say the same thing, but through having conversations like this with you, it's a good starting point for beginners, intermediate, and advanced hobbyists to start thinking, start understanding, and knowing where to go for information. We talked about this at the beginning of the podcast, but I really appreciate that as a breeder from the get-go, you thought that I can't produce the frog if I'm not going to produce the care information as well. You put it on your website, you share it with all your customers one-on-one directly through conversations in person or online. And so I really appreciate that about Smart Exotics. I think that's great. Before we get going, do you have any other closing thoughts or remarks?
Yeah, I think this is a good like avenue for people to like really not dive too deep into the weeds on like all the husbandry. Like they can get kind of like listen to this podcast and go, okay, these are some things I need to be aware of if I'm going to enter in as a beginner. This, I think, at least for today's interaction, it's not meant to give you all the details you need. It's meant to give you a snapshot of the way of thinking, the way of being attentive to these animals, again, because they are exotic animals still. They're not a dog and a cat. Like this is a good introductory to just your expectations should be when keeping these animals. I guess maybe that's the framework. It's helping frame that out for people of, I need to take care of these. I need to be attentive. And then every bit of this attentiveness I'm putting into it, I'm going to get this amazing experience that, you're not going to find in your backyard. Like you're not going to see these animals when you look out your window. And that's another part of what we're trying to do too, is like get people engaged with things that they can't see from their backyard. Maybe this will get you thinking about what's happening in these jungle areas, neotropical forests, or even Southeast Asia forests with these animal species, and when the habitat loss that's happening, like that once you start thinking about the care that's required for these animals, maybe, hey, oh my God, this is what it takes to keep these. I can't believe they're existing in the wild.
Yeah, right.
Like that, maybe that's what I'm hoping people to get out of this too. Like, but again, positive experiences, that's what we're trying to promote here. And I hope this really does give the framework for people to like start asking more questions. And our website's set up too, and I'm sure maybe even their local breeders that if they're on the other side of the country, like they've got somebody they can talk to as well. Like, we're not the end all be all. I'm still learning. And as we learn and change and grow with the hobby, things will change too. We should expect things to change. It's not going to stay stagnant. We're going to find better ways to do things. So people should expect like, hey, while I know this now, we might be working towards a better way of doing it too.
Awesome. You vend a lot of reptile expos as a way to get out there and meet customers and get frogs into hobbyists' hands. What are some of the expos that people might find you at?
Right now, for the rest of the year, we're in the Mid-Atlantic Reptile Expo route. That takes us to like a lot of shows in Pennsylvania. So we're doing Carlisle, Pennsylvania, Lebanon, Pennsylvania. They have one in Winchester, Virginia. So we're kind of in that DC metro area. We also do the Hamburg Reptile Expo in Morgantown, PA. It's another larger one for the region. Like I think that was like at one point that one was the biggest one in Pennsylvania for a number of years, well before we started. And then we also do Repticon in Baltimore, which has been a really nice like kind of change in population. The people we get to meet significantly different, which is nice. So if you're looking for tree frogs and or dart frogs, we've got a variety that we bring with us. It may not always be the same thing every time. It's really dependent on what we're working with, because as we talked about, like the workload required to maintain these animals, like we can't, things are going to change. We'll have red eyes for a while. We may not have them for a couple months until it cycles back around. So, hit us up at one expo. If we don't have what you want, we'll probably have it at the next one.
Awesome. Awesome. Hey, would you come back on for another podcast in the future?
Yeah, like if you get enough positive feedback on this episode that people want to hear more from me, like,
Yeah.
I like to talk. I feel like I have a lot of useful information and like fun experiences on like, you know, this is what I'm doing now, or this is things I've learned on making enclosures or things like that. Yeah, I'd be willing to share pretty much anything that I'm working on,
Awesome.
as long as it's useful for your audience.
Yeah. Well, I'm just curious about some of the other species you keep too. So I have no shortage of questions for you. So we'll make time.
No,
Yep.
and
We can.
the list is getting longer on the species, unfortunately. Like it's more work.
Awesome. Awesome. And people can find you smartexotics.net, Smart Exotics on Facebook and Instagram. Check Mark out there. Check out his cool frogs and even some reptiles. Thanks, Mark. Take care.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It was fun.
For sure.
Catch you later, man.
Bye. Thanks for listening to episode 2 of the Frog Rack podcast with Mark from smartexotics.net. If you listened to this podcast, maybe while you were scraping frog poop off your glass, or maybe you were driving to work, or making fruit fly cultures, I appreciate it. To build a stronger community around these conversations, please like, subscribe, and share the Frog Rack podcast. Engage on YouTube in the comments section. Give us an idea about what tree frogs you keep. Thanks for joining us today. Stay tuned.